Imagine a city of 8 million suddenly plunged into complete darkness. No warning, no storm, just black. In the next 24 hours, New York would see looting, arson, and chaos, but also something far stranger. This wasn't just a blackout. It was a spark, igniting political scandals, transforming entire neighborhoods, and quietly reshaping American culture. The wildest part? It all started with a tiny, almost boring technical failure that lit a fire under the entire city. Ask most New Yorkers today about the 1977 blackout, and you'll hear the same story. It was just a hot summer night, the power went out, and the city went wild. People blame the heat wave, which was already pushing tempers to the edge. Or they chalk it up to the bad old days of the 70s, when graffiti-covered subways rattled through the city. Times Square was a neon circus of vice, and crime was something you planned your day around. The common version is almost comforting. It makes the blackout feel like just another entry in New York's long list of gritty, chaotic nights. A freak accident. Unavoidable. No deeper meaning. But here's where it gets interesting. The blackout didn't hit every city the same way. Chicago? Calm. Boston? Relatively quiet. New York? It exploded, literally, into flames. Why? Because by 1977, the city wasn't just broke, it was teetering on the edge of collapse. And for certain people in power, chaos wasn't a nightmare. It was an opportunity. Let's rewind. The 1970s were brutal for New York. Factories were closing. Jobs were vanishing. Middle-class families were fleeing to the suburbs in droves, leaving behind hollowed-out neighborhoods and shrinking tax revenue. The city government was drowning in debt, so much so that in 1975, New York nearly declared bankruptcy. When Mayor Abe Beame went to Washington begging for help, President Gerald Ford's administration famously told the city to drop dead. The message was clear: no bailout. Services were slashed. Police patrols thinned. Firehouses closed in already high-risk neighborhoods. Trash piled up on sidewalks. And crime? It skyrocketed. Now layer on the summer of '77. Temperatures in the high 90s, with humidity thick enough to feel like you were breathing soup. Tensions boiling over from years of neglect. And the son of Sam serial killer still on the loose, targeting young couples across the boroughs. Fear was already crackling through the city like static electricity. And then, Con Edison. The power company had been warned. Their grid was fragile, outdated, and overdue for major repairs. Instead, they deferred upgrades, shrugged off smaller outages, and crossed their fingers. They called it efficiency. In reality, it was a gamble. On July 13th at 8:37 p.m., a lightning strike hit a substation north of the city. Normally, backup systems would isolate the failure and reroute power. That night, one safeguard after another failed, like dominoes falling in slow motion. Within minutes, the lights went out. Everywhere. And that's when New York's Real test began. At first, the blackout felt almost magical. Neighbors leaned out of windows, calling to each other across the dark streets. People spilled on his stoops and sidewalks, marveling at how many stars they could see without the city's glare. Kids splashed in a spray of illegally open hydrants. For maybe 20 minutes, it felt like summer camp in the world's biggest city. Then the city snapped. By 9 p.m., the first store windows were smashed in the Bronx. Soon, the chaos spread to Brooklyn, Manhattan, and Queens. Crowds rushed into electronic shops, sneaker stores, jewelry boutiques, grabbing whatever they could carry. By midnight, cars burned in the streets. Entire blocks were stripped bare. In just 24 hours, over 1,600 stores were damaged. More than 1,000 fires were reported. Police arrested 3,776 people, the largest mass arrest in city history. Here's the part most people don't realize. The NYPD couldn't or wouldn't contain it. Residents called for help, but officers were slow to respond. Some were ordered to hold position instead of intervening, almost as if someone wanted the destruction to run its course. Why would anyone want a city to burn? By 1977, New York was deep into a policy called planned shrinkage, a cold, bureaucratic term for letting in profitable neighborhoods decline so the city could cut costs. It meant closing schools, shuttering firehouses, and quietly withdrawing police presence. The official line? Economic necessity. The unofficial effect? Whole communities, often poor and predominantly minority, were left to fend for themselves. Now imagine you're a city planner looking to bulldoze blighted areas for redevelopment. You need a reason the public will accept. What's more convincing than an entire neighborhood suddenly looking hopelessly dangerous and damaged? During the blackout, some of the hardest-hit areas, like Bushwick, were already on the chopping block. When the lights came back, the damage was so extensive that urban renewal projects moved in almost immediately. To the public, it looked like rescue. To many locals, it looked like a land grab. Coincidence? Maybe. But in a city where backroom deals were as common as subway delays, the blackout's timing was almost too perfect. Then there's Con Edison. For years, the company boasted that its electrical grid was one of the most reliable in the world. Behind the scenes, maintenance budgets had been cut, inspections rushed, and outdated equipment left in service long past its prime. When the blackout hit, public outrage should have buried the company. Instead, they walked away with a $310 million federal loan and the political green light to raise rates. Suddenly, their catastrophe became their biggest business opportunity in years. Even stranger, a later investigation revealed the lightning strike alone shouldn't have caused a total shutdown. It took a perfect storm of human errors, missed alarms, wrong switches flipped, and delayed responses to plunge the city into darkness. Mistakes so glaring that some wondered if they were mistakes at all. By the time the lights flickered back on at 10:39 p.m. the next night, New York wasn't just physically scarred. It had been reorganized. Its power, property, and even culture shifted in ways that would last for decades. And that's when we hit the real curveball. Just when you think the 1977 blackout was about greed, neglect, and urban policy, another twist shows up. In the months after the lights came back, certain businesses, especially electronics and appliance stores, reported record profits. Why? Insurance payouts for riot damage were flowing fast. Some stores claimed losses bigger than their actual inventory. Investigators quietly suspected fraud, but few cases made it to court. And then there's the cultural aftershock. The blackout didn't just change city planning. It helped birth a movement. In neighborhoods like the Bronx, looters carried away DJ, turntables, mixers, and speakers they could never afford before. Within weeks, park jams exploded. Many hip-hop pioneers later admitted their first setups came straight from that night. So in a bizarre way, the same event that torched neighborhoods also lit the fuse on one of America's greatest cultural exports. And here's the kicker. Years later, property developers swooped into blackout-scarred blocks, buying up buildings for pennies. Within a decade, those same properties were worth millions. It starts to feel less like random chance and more like a controlled demolition. A reset button. One night where money shifted hands, power shifted upward, and the official story stayed neat and simple. Lightning struck. Stuff happened. But you don't buy that anymore, do you? The 1977 blackout wasn't just a night without power. It was a pressure test, exposing every weak spot in New York's political, economic, and cultural foundation. Some saw chaos. Others saw a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And decades later, you can still trace its fingerprints on gentrified streets, in political decisions, and in the playlists of anyone who's ever hit play on a hip-hop classic. That's the thing about freak accidents. Sometimes they're random, but sometimes they're the perfect storm where negligence, ambition, and opportunity collide. Now, you know the part they leave out of the fun blackout stories. The part that makes you look at every headline and wonder, who benefited? And what happened next that never could have happened without it? If this made you raise an eyebrow, or three, share it. Because the fastest way to keep a secret is to convince everyone it doesn't matter. All right, that's the real talk for today. What were your biggest takeaways? Let me know in the comments below. If you dug this video, a like would be awesome, and subscribe so you don't miss the next deep dive. See you then.